a lot for having me here today to talk to you a bit about some research we have been doing at Nesta, exploring the skills implication of the data revolution. And this is some work we have been doing in collaboration with Creative Skillset and the Royal Statistical Society. Here we have been exploring what data talent are UK businesses looking for. And because these people are actually being so hard to find, they are being referred to as unicorns, henceforth the name of this presentation, Looking for Unicorns. And maybe to give you a bit of context about where we are coming from to this. Nesta is the UK's innovation foundation. We want to support innovative individuals and organizations in the UK to bring their ideas to life, and we do this through practical programs, we do this through investment, and we do this through knowledge, through policy and research, and that's the part of Nesta where I work. And as you can imagine, we are pretty interested in data. It's obvious that we live in the midst of a data revolution. We are surrounded by data. We constantly create data. 90% of the data that exists today was created in the last couple of years. There are many opportunities that we can capture by exploiting this data. In previous research I've done, for example, we found that those organizations which are more analytical are 10% more productive after we control for everything else. There's a great opportunity to create value from data. However, in order to do so, we need to have access to the right skills. We need to be able to work with the data. We need to be able to extract insight from all of that data, and we need to apply that data. And this is what we decided to look at in this project that we are working on. And one thing that we found when we started to look at this is that when people talk about the type of talent that can create value from data, and you know, this is a very supposedly data-heavy area, they use terminology from magic, legend, mythology, superstition. And it didn't feel to us that this was a very good way of informing sensible decision making. So we decided to do something as economists, and it's perhaps it's a bit of a boring approach, but it was simply to try to bring more data into the debate and take away some of the mythology. And the research questions that we were exploring were quite basic, I guess. What are the skills of productive data analysts? Is the education system in the UK producing enough of these people? How can managers organize their data talent to create value? The idea here is that we want to generate implications for policymakers, for educators, but also for managers. The data at this first stage of the research, which I'm going to be focusing on today, is 45 in-depth interviews with managers, with people in analytics teams, insights teams, data scientists, CTOs, HR. And this is in a variety of sectors, including financial services, pharma, retail, manufacturing, ICT, and also creative media. And this includes advertising, this includes video games, this includes broadcasting. And even though I'm going to be focusing a bit more on what those people said in what follows, I'm going to be talking about what other sectors are saying, because I think there's a lot of scope for learning, for innovation, when ideas, when techniques, when talent jump across sectors. And I hope you'll find this interesting. So in order to understand what was going on in our research, the first thing we did was try to map the data landscape. The idea is that different businesses rely on different types of data. They have different business models to create value from that data, and this means they are going to be looking for different types of talent. And we try to get a sense of this through this data frame that has one dimension referring to volume, the volumes of data that an organization is working with. You know, is it megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes? I never remember the order of those. And also we are considering the variety, and these are two of the three famous V's that are used to define big data by Gartner. In terms of variety, here we are capturing whether an organization works with very structured data, a single data set. Do they work with a bunch of different data sets? Are they working with super messy data that requires a lot of work before you can even start analyzing it? And that's where we have the variety. And what we found is when we mapped our 45 respondents in this framework, we find that the majority of them are still in a very traditional business intelligence style paradigm, where they are working with structured data sets, not very big data sets. The data is often in silos in different parts of the organization. The data are generally used for description rather than prediction. And the types of talent which are recruited to work with the data are business analytics people, business intelligence people. We have, in terms of larger volumes of data, but not that much variety, we have all of the data-intensive science people over here, the pharma companies working on genomics with clinical trial data and so forth. Here we have the web analytics organizations working with respectable volumes of data that's coming really rapidly all the time, and it's also data that can be quite messy, quite unstructured. We have e-commerce companies here, we have media companies here who recruit digital marketing experts. And finally, in this corner over here, we have the organizations who are working with large volumes of data, large varieties of data. And I guess this is the big data corner. And this is the minority. This is one in four of the respondents to this study. What these organizations are doing is they are mining these large data sets for insights that they are using not just to make decisions, but to build new products and services. They are in online banking, they are doing online games, they are developing social media platforms, and to do this, they are recruiting data scientists, which are the unicorns. And I'll be talking a bit more about those people in a moment. So, these guys are in the minority, but actually, what's happening is that the situation is changing over time. As more data sets become available, as more analytical techniques become widespread, as more competition starts playing out, everyone's kind of starting to explore what's going on in this space. And they can be skeptical about the term big data. It's a bit of a bandwagon, what is big and so forth. But actually, they're all sort of dipping their toes in this area. The pharma guys are combining their genomics data and their clinical trial data with social media data. Web analytics doing super sophisticated work, working real-time bidding, predictive analytics, clustering analysis, and so forth. The business intelligence people are also bringing all of their different data silos together. They're starting to think about not just understanding the past, but predicting the future. And what this means is that we have a bit of a convergence taking place in terms of the types of talent that these organizations look for. And actually, the type of talent that these organizations look for sound an awful lot like the data scientist. What's the perfect analyst look like in terms of their knowledge and capabilities? They are people who have strong analytical skills to extract insights from the data, and this includes the traditional stats stuff, as well as techniques coming from computer science, like machine learning. They have computing skills, and this relates to their ability to get the data, to manage the data, do the database work, and also to use data insights to build data products, or at least prototypes for those products. Going beyond those technical skills, there is the need for domain knowledge, an understanding of what data means within an industry, and also an understanding of the real-world processes that generate the data, what these things that are being measured mean, and also a strong understanding that in a business context, it's not like in academia. Data is not an end in itself, it's a tool to achieve business goals. Also important, the storytelling skills. And this has a data visualization angle, but it also has a charisma angle, an ability to tell a compelling story, to tell a story that drives action within the organization, as well as the ability to do team work with different disciplines within the organization, both within data teams, but also more widely, including people who are less, perhaps, data literate. And finally, all of the good stuff, creativity, curiosity, problem solving, thinking out of the box. And yeah, I mean, it's quite a list here, and you won't be surprised to find that actually the majority of the companies that we spoke to are struggling to find people like this, because actually these people are unicorns. And once we start to get into the specifics of why is it so difficult to find this talent in the market, there's a sense that the talent out there lacks skills and experience. So you have people coming out of university who haven't worked with large data sets. They have never worked with messy data, really. They don't know the latest techniques. You can hire them and train them up, but that's expensive, and you need them to be producing now. The experienced people who can do this stuff are really expensive, really hard to find. There's also the question of not being enough talent. The talent that exists don't have the right mix of skills. So we have brilliant analysts who can't code. We have brilliant coders who can't analyze. We have people who are brilliant coders and analysts, but according to one of the financial services companies we spoke, it would be great if they never had to leave the room, but they actually have to leave the room, and they have to communicate, and they have to tell a story, and that can be difficult. And there's also internal capability issues. So it's not just about what's happening in the labor market, it's actually what's happening inside the organization. Can you convince your senior management about the value of data? Can you convince your HR team that this is not just another IT job? Can you get the relevant CVs out there? And when they come in, can you actually evaluate whether these people can do what they say they can do? Because we're living in a world of big data inflation. Everyone's putting Hadoop in their CVs in LinkedIn. Everyone's putting like all of these buzzwords. And the question is, can these people actually do what they say they do? How do you assess this if you haven't done it yourself? And this can create skill shortages and problems recruiting. So we try to, there's a sense of a data talent crunch taking place. The question is, how are the companies that we spoke to dealing with this situation? How are they building up their data capabilities? And we grouped the practices that they are following to do this in 4 broad areas. And we get into a lot of detail about this on the report. But I'll quickly take you through them. The first thing is just to stand above the competition to find data talent. And here we are finding that organizations are, and by the way, this is going to be echoing a lot of what Max and Sydney were talking about before, because I think that many of these issues actually don't relate to data analysts per se. It just relates to the difficulties of recruiting creative, highly skilled talent. And there will be some things which are maybe more specific to data talent, but we'll get to that. So find, innovate, think outside of the box in terms of how do you get this talent. Isn't it great if instead of having to look for this talent, you get this talent to come to you? Because you have a reputation for doing great data work. You publish blogs, you publish great visualizations, you contribute to open source projects, you do all of those things. What about going to look for them, not through a recruitment agency, but go to look for them in the communities where they congregate? These people are getting together in meetups. If you look for meetups for data scientists in London, there's hundreds of them already. You can go to competition sites like Kaggle. You can go to expert websites like Stack Exchange. Go to look them where they are. And also very importantly, I think, especially for sectors which don't have a reputation for being the destination for hardcore quantitative talent, is go to universities, speak to the students, and flag up that you are really in the market for these people. And this is something that we found, for example, broadcasters are doing, like Channel 4 actually. Go to the machine learning people in UCL and get those really smart MSCs right there. Second practice, don't wait for the unicorns, build data teams. And this is what I'm trying to get at through this wonderful picture from Dungeons and Dragons. Just build teams, and this is all about diversity in terms of skill sets, in terms of knowledge, in terms of attitudes, people who can communicate, people who can analyze, people who are coming from different disciplines. And basically, when you do that, is when really you have truly creative, innovative teams that can not just optimize and exploit, but also explore. Third thing, choose where you locate the data talent carefully. And we found that actually the companies we spoke to adopted different strategies in terms of where to put their data talent. You could put them in a centralized team, just like have a specialist unit. That has the advantage of having a critical mass of people working together. The problem is that these teams can become a bit isolated from the rest of the organization. They can develop a bit of an ivory tower mentality. You can address that risk by instead embedding the analysts in different parts of the organization. And that means they'll have access to a really clear sense of what are the priorities, what are the business priorities within those functions. The problem with that is that they might end up creating silos. They might end up becoming fragmented. And the organizations that we spoke to, obviously, they had to choose what to do. But whatever it is that they did, they tried to develop practices to address the risk that strategy entails. So for example, the decentralized organizations actually try to build connectivity with the rest of the organization through secondments, by moving people around, or even by having almost like a layer of business-savvy people around the analytics team that's constantly looking at the organization and asking what are the questions that the analytics team needs to be answering in order to create value for your part of the organization. And finally, manage data talent as creative talent. The idea here is that, sometimes when one thinks about data work, it's perceived to be routine, it's all about predictability, it doesn't sound as very creative. But actually, many of the data projects that we explored with the people we interviewed are innovative projects, they are creative projects. And I guess that's what I wanted to get at with this print from Alice in Wonderland. These projects can take you some pretty weird places, unexpected situations, there's uncertainty, there's risk, there's all of those challenges, but those things can be managed. And actually, one thing that that the organizations we told to do is try to avoid situations where, and going back to Alice in Wonderland again, their analysts go down rabbit holes. They got lost in the data and they lose sense of the fact that, as I said before, this data is a tool rather than an end in itself. So yeah, those are, I guess, the main practices. We get into a bit of detail about all of these things in the report itself. We also have some policy implications for the work. In terms of what needs to happen in the short term, we need to develop workforce skills. We need to build up the data scientist profession, and I think this really involves people from different industries coming together and speaking and sharing good practice, and also any evidence that they have about the value that data creates within their organizations that can be really useful to build this case for data analysts and data scientists. Ensure access to overseas talent. If the UK is lucky enough to have smart students wanting to come to do all of these MSCs and PhDs in data-related subjects, data entrepreneurs, all of these people, we shouldn't turn them away, especially when we have this data talent crunch. We need to have better communication between university and industry. Promote interdisciplinarity. It's not good enough to have the people in the stats department sitting in one corner of campus, not talking to the computer scientists, not talking to the business people, not talking to the marketing people. We need to have more crossover between them so that we can start producing a bit more of those multidisciplinary unicorns. And we also need to improve teaching of maths and stats in schools. And finally, very importantly, I think, it's a softer thing, is that we need to change perceptions of data jobs as something that's uncreative and boring. Some of the most exciting jobs in the UK economy today, from discovering new drugs to developing new games, to selling fashion, to really understanding what makes society tick, involve using and working with data. And we really need to make sure that young people understand this, that managers understand this, that everyone understands this. And I'm not saying this because I'm an analyst myself. Next steps. I'm actually, it's kind of ironic that I'm talking about big data and I'm presenting a report based on 45 observations. I'm actually looking at a larger survey where we explore the same questions with a larger sample. Still not big data, but bigger data. And we are really, again, like as analysts, I love the analysis and it's great and it's fun, but actually we're thinking about how do we go from our analysis to impact. And we are talking to policymakers about what this means for educational and skills policy. We are talking to support bodies and learner societies and so forth. And also we want to understand what does this mean for businesses, in terms of training solutions, in terms of adoption of good practices, in terms of what data do really businesses do to do this kind of, to go on this journey. And I guess the thing to say is that, hopefully as we move forward, we will start to get a few more unicorns into the market so that finding them is not so difficult. And that's it from me. And if you want to follow up, if you have any questions, anything, there's my email address and so forth. And thank you very much for listening.
Juan, wait there for a second. Can I, thank you. Just before you sit down, one of the things that occurs to me is as well as, you've talked about a group of people who are recruited with these skills and the importance of them being recognized and all the rest of it in a company. Just wonder whether there's an extent to which companies have got to recruit and recognize data manipulation skills right across the board amongst all employees in
Yeah.
the future to a greater extent than they have in the past. And actually, you know, going back to dear Eleven Davis, whose ghost kind of is hovering here, who ought to be here with us today. By the way, he's not here just because he's doing Newsnight. Nothing's happened to the guy. Well, something has happened to him. He's got another job in a medium that probably isn't going to last, but there we go. But you know, one of the things that really separates Evan out from almost all of his colleagues is that he is numerate. And most journalists aren't numerate. And I just wonder in your industry as well, including people who regard themselves as wholly creative, that the use and ability to manipulate data, given how obviously important it is,
Yeah.
and how creative it is in terms of where it takes you as a business and what opportunities it gives you, is a kind of change that people have got to come to.
Oh, definitely. I mean, one thing that, you know, we have kind of focused on the specialist data analysts, as it were, in this research, but there's a sense that if you don't have a culture of respect for data within an organization, both at the senior level and also in the front line, you know, you can get the most amazing analytical algorithms and regressions and everything. Those results are just not going to be used. You need to build data literacy across the organization. And it's not just about people understanding the value of these things. It's also about people understanding the limitations of these things so that they are not just blinded by science. Yeah. When the analysts come to present to them, it's understanding that, you know, these models are probabilistic, they are based on some very strong assumptions in some cases, and they need to be challenged, and sometimes they don't work, and you need to have a capacity within the organization to make that challenge, and that requires everyone to have those skills. And I think that's where it's very important to improve the teaching of maths and applied maths in schools, and we are having those conversations. But also it's very important for more and more courses in universities to offer some sort of options or modules for people in many different disciplines, those domain experts in journalism, media, whatever, to at least like dip their toes into this, be able to understand what it's about, and if they find that it's their thing, they can just take it from there.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again.